In the 1940s, one of Hollywood's most magnetic stars simply vanished without a trace. For years, film historians searched for Louise Brooks, the raven-haired beauty whose iconic bob haircut had defined an entire generation. When they finally tracked her down, what they discovered was both heartbreaking and shocking. But Louise's story of self-destruction began long before her mysterious disappearance from Tinseltown. Born in 1906 in the small Kansas town of Cherryvale, Louise Brooks seemed destined for greatness from the very beginning. Her father Leonard was a successful lawyer with an extensive library, while her mother Myra was an accomplished pianist who filled their home with the works of Debussy and Ravel. Yet beneath this cultured facade lurked a darkness that would haunt Louise for the rest of her life. When she was just 9 years old, a neighbor known as Mr. Flowers shattered her innocence forever. This predator targeted the young girl, leaving psychological scars that Louise herself would later blame for her inability to maintain lasting relationships. The trauma was compounded when she finally told her mother about the abuse, only to be blamed for supposedly leading him on. This devastating childhood experience shaped Louise's approach to love and intimacy, creating patterns that would follow her throughout her tumultuous life. She developed a need for relationships that contained an element of domination, explaining later that nice, soft, easy men were never enough. By age 10, however, Louise had found her escape through dance, performing at local venues and quickly gaining recognition for her magnetic stage presence. Louise's raw talent caught the attention of the prestigious Denishan Dance Company, one of America's most renowned modern dance troupes. She moved to New York City as a teenager, where she performed opposite company founder Ted Shawn and seemed poised for a brilliant career. But success bred jealousy, particularly from co-founder Ruth St. Denis, who viewed Louise as a threat. In a humiliating public dismissal, St. Denis fired Louise in front of the other dancers, dealing a blow that left lasting emotional scars. Rather than retreat, Louise bounced back with remarkable resilience. She landed work as a chorus girl in George White's Scandals and later joined the famous Ziegfeld Follies. It was here that her striking beauty and distinctive bob haircut caught the eye of Paramount Pictures producer Walter Wenger. By 1925, Louise had signed a 5-year contract with Paramount, marking her entry into the golden age of Hollywood. Yet even as her star rose, Louise was already forming the dangerous relationships that would ultimately destroy her. Her affair with Paramount producer Walter Wenger was conducted in secret, as he had a wife waiting at home. More significantly, through her connections to media magnate William Randolph Hearst's inner circle at San Simeon, Louise became intimate friends with Pepe Lederer, the rebellious niece of actress Marion Davies. Pepe was everything Louise found irresistible: wild, wealthy, and utterly uncompromising about living life on her own terms. Both women were openly involved with other women at a time when such relationships had to remain deeply hidden. Their passionate affair scandalized even the sophisticated circles they moved in, but Louise found in Pepe a kindred spirit who shared her appetite for pleasure and rebellion against conventional morality. The relationship took a dark turn when Hearst discovered Pepe's lifestyle and drug addiction. In 1935, driven by a combination of moral outrage and concern, he had the young woman committed to a mental institution against her will. What happened next devastated Louise beyond measure. Within days of being institutionalized, Pepe took her own life, jumping from a 6th-floor hospital window. She was just 25 years old. Louise was performing in a ballroom dance act at the Plaza Hotel when news of Pepe's death reached her. Looking in her dressing room mirror, she thought with characteristic detachment that Pepe's dreaded visit to Hollywood had lasted exactly 6 weeks. But beneath her composed exterior, Louise was shattered. The loss of her closest companion marked one of the darkest turning points in her life, contributing to her growing dissatisfaction with Hollywood and American society. By this time, Louise was already making career decisions that seemed designed to sabotage her own success. When Paramount refused to give her the raise she'd been promised, she made a choice that would echo throughout film history. German director G.W. Pabst had offered her the lead role in a film called Pandora's Box, and Louise decided to walk away from Hollywood at the height of her fame to pursue what she saw as serious artistic work in Europe. The decision scandalized her Hollywood peers, who viewed her departure as professional destruction. But Louise had grown tired of the studio system's control over every aspect of her life, from her relationships to her career choices. In Pabst, she found a director who treated her with respect unknown in Hollywood, allowing her to develop a subtle, naturalistic acting style that was decades ahead of its time. Her work in Pandora's Box and Diary of a Lost Girl showcased Louise's remarkable screen presence, creating performances that film scholars now consider among the greatest in cinema history. Her portrayal of Lulu, a sexually liberated woman whose desires lead to her destruction, was both groundbreaking and prophetic. The films included some of the earliest sympathetic portrayals of lesbian characters, reflecting Louise's own complex relationship with sexuality. But when Louise decided to return to America, she made the fatal error that ended her career forever. She refused to come back early to dub her own voice for The Canary Murder Case, a sound film that Paramount had made during her absence. Her stubborn pride cost her everything. The studio blacklisted her across Hollywood, effectively ending her career at age 23. The next decade saw Louise's precipitous fall from grace. By 1932, she was forced to declare bankruptcy, having lost everything she'd earned during her peak years. She attempted to return to her Kansas roots, opening a dance studio in Wichita, but the townspeople treated her with a mixture of resentment and judgment. She was simultaneously too much of a failure and too much of a success for their comfort. Louise fled to New York City, where she scraped by with a series of increasingly desperate jobs: radio actress, gossip columnist, sales girl at Saks Fifth Avenue. By the late 1940s, according to her own account, she had reached rock bottom. She later claimed that she worked as a courtesan for wealthy clients and eventually for an escort agency, though some scholars debate whether this was literal truth or Louise's characteristic dark humor about her circumstances. What's certain is that she spent years in a small New York apartment, drinking heavily and contemplating ending her life. She wrote later about flirting with the fancies related to little bottles filled with yellow sleeping pills, revealing the depth of her despair during this period. The once celebrated beauty who had set fashion trends and defined an era had become a forgotten relic, surviving in obscurity and poverty. The resurrection of Louise Brooks's reputation came from an unexpected source. In 1955, French film historian Henry Langlois discovered her films and proclaimed, "There is no Garbo, there is no Dietrich, there is only Louise Brooks." This proclamation sparked a revival of interest in her work that would transform her from a forgotten has-been into a revered cinema legend. Film curator James Card tracked Louise down to her tiny New York apartment and convinced her to move to Rochester, where she could write about her experiences in Hollywood. Despite her initial reluctance, Louise discovered she had a remarkable talent for film criticism and memoir writing. Her essays combined brutal honesty with literary sophistication, offering insights into the movie industry that no one else could provide. In 1982, Louise published Lulu in Hollywood, a collection of her writings that received universal critical acclaim. Her prose was sharp, unforgiving, and utterly compelling, revealing an intellect that had been hiding behind her reputation as merely a beautiful face. She wrote with the same uncompromising honesty that had destroyed her career, refusing to name names or settle old scores, but providing devastating portraits of Hollywood's power structures and pretensions. Louise Brooks died in 1985, at age 78, having transformed herself from a fallen star into one of cinema's most respected voices. Her influence extends far beyond her brief film career. Her bob haircut remains iconic nearly a century later, and her performances in Pabst's films continue to be studied by actors and film scholars worldwide. Perhaps most remarkably, Louise Brooks's story demonstrates that even the most devastating fall from grace can be transformed into something meaningful. She refused to be defined by others' expectations or society's judgments, choosing instead to live life entirely on her own terms, regardless of the cost. Her willingness to walk away from fame and fortune to pursue artistic integrity was decades ahead of its time, prefiguring later stars who would make similar choices. Louise once wrote that she considered herself somewhat of a failure in everything she'd attempted.
Yet in refusing to compromise her principles or apologize for her choices, she created a legacy that has outlasted most of her more successful contemporaries. Her story serves as both a cautionary tale about the price of uncompromising individualism and an inspiring example of how it's possible to reinvent oneself entirely, even after the most spectacular failures. In a world that often demands conformity, Louise Brooks remains a powerful reminder that some spirits are simply too wild to be tamed.